So, you've heard of this newfangled game called Disney Lorcana, and you've stumbled upon our humble channel to learn how to play. Or maybe you're not even sure if you want to play. So why play Disney Lorcana? Well, as a trading card game, or TCG, there are endless possibilities. Want to make a deck centered around your favorite character? You can do that. Want to make a deck that plays huge characters dominating the board, or a horde of small characters overrunning your opponent? You can do that. You get to make your deck how you like it, and with the ability to play against one or multiple opponents at the same time, no two games are ever the same. To construct your deck, you may use 2 of any of the 6 colors of ink available in the game. Each color of ink has its own personality. The way that color tries to win the game will vary, along with some of the abilities you'll see favored by one color or another. This way, the colors you choose to combine in your deck will affect the way you play the game and the strategies you employ to win the game. Beyond the deck building element comes the excitement of opening the cards themselves. You've been waiting for weeks to play with Hades, King of Olympus, and you finally opened him. Time to build a new deck and get him to the table. When you hear the word glimmer, think permanent, a character or item that will rest permanently on the board until it is discarded. Unlike glimmers, action cards take effect only once and are immediately discarded. Let's examine the components of a card and each type of card before we get into the gameplay. Ink cost. Most of what you can do on your turn is limited by your available ink. Think of ink like the game's currency. It allows you to pay for the cards you wish to play. You'll find the ink cost in the top left corner. Inkable versus non-inkable. Notice the detailed pattern around the numbered cost of the card in the top left corner. That pattern indicates that this card is inkable. What does that mean? We'll get a little bit more into that further into the gameplay, but suffice to say that if a card is inkable, you'll be able to use it to pay for other cards. If it is non-inkable, like our example here of Lady Tremaine, that means that card can only be cast as the character itself. It cannot be used to play other cards. Strength and willpower. We'll get more into how characters interact with each other with their strength and willpower, but suffice to say that the strength indicates the amount of damage that this character will do to an opposing character, and the willpower indicates how much damage it can receive in turn before it is banished or removed from the table. Lore. We will cover lore later, but for now, what you need to know is that a character's lore count, shown in the bottom right side of the card, will contribute to your goal of gaining 20 lore to win the game. Abilities. We will cover abilities later. For now, know that a card's abilities will be shown in the main text box at the bottom of the card. Some abilities, like Animate Broom, are static and always on. And some, like Ceaseless Worker, trigger when a certain condition is met. Rarity. For all you collectors out there, on the very bottom center part of the card, it indicates the rarity of the card itself. Some are going to be harder to get. This won't have any effect on the gameplay itself, but either for our collectors or knowing how difficult it's going to be for you to get this card, you'll want to pay attention to the rarity. If you're new to trading card games, check out our deck building series to get a better idea of how to assemble decks. You can also purchase pre-made starter decks if you find that the idea is too intimidating at first. That's okay, we're all learning here. The goal of the game is to get to 20 lore before your opponent does. We'll discuss how we accomplish this throughout the video, but when you hear the term lore, think of it like victory points in any other game. On your turn, you can perform multiple actions. These are: put a card from your hand into your inkwell. You may reveal an inkable card to your opponent and place it face down into the lower half of your board, which is designated as your inkwell. This part of the board is sectioned off to clearly indicate which cards you are using as ink. You may only perform this action once per turn. Play cards from your hand. You may exert a number of ink equal to the cost of the card in your hand. To exert simply means to turn the card 90 degrees to indicate that it is being used this turn. If the card that you are playing is a glimmer, you put it on the top half of your board face up. The amount of cards you play in a turn is limited only by your ability to pay the ink cost. Note, character cards may not be exerted the turn they come into play. This is referred to as summoning sickness. However, items may be exerted the first turn they come into play. Exert your glimmers in play. Keeping in mind which of your glimmers have summoning sickness, any others may be exerted for a number of reasons. Some may have abilities that require them to exert. You may exert the appropriate costed character to sing a song. They may exert to quest for their lore count. They may challenge an opponent's exerted characters. When you exert your character to challenge an opponent's, it deals damage equal to your character's strength to the opposing character's willpower. If that damage is equal to or exceeds that opponent's character's willpower, that character is banished, and you put it in your discard pile. However, regardless of whether the character is banished, it likewise deals damage equal to its strength to your challenging character. If that damage equals or exceeds its willpower, it too is banished. Note, all damage remains on a character throughout the game until it is banished. Gameplay. Once you have your deck on the table, the game starts with each player drawing 7 cards. You will then have the option of putting some of those cards on the bottom of your deck and drawing back up to 7. This can only be done once at the start of each game and is referred to as a mulligan. When looking at your opening hand, you want to consider a few things. Do I have at least 2 to 3 early game plays? Things you can play on turns 1 to 3 to establish a board presence. This refers to having characters or items on the board that threaten to increase your lore or challenge your opponent's characters. Be wary about falling behind early. Do I have at least 2 to 3 inkable cards? Ideally, you don't want these to be the same cards you plan to play early. Is there a card I've built my deck around that is a must-keep? If you've constructed your deck based on a combination of 2 to 3 cards, and you see 1 or more of them in your opening hand, you'll probably want to keep them. How aggressive do I want to be with my mulligan? Here comes the greed factor. Knowing you could potentially draw better cards than the ones in your hand, how aggressive do you want to be with the cards you set aside? I personally tend to be more aggressive, where I'll mulligan on average 3 to 4 cards out of my opening hand. However, if you're new to the game, consider being more conservative to ensure you have those early plays and enough ink to play them with. Abilities. There are currently several abilities introduced in Disney Lorcana, and I'm sure there's plenty more to come. When referring to abilities on characters or items, you may come across the term keyword. A keyword ability refers to an ability that can be summed up with one word, and is typically used for multiple cards across 1 or more sets. This way, when the ability is first introduced, it may be explained in detail on the card. However, when the ability is reused in later sets, the game designer can simply print that one keyword on the card, and those playing the game know what the ability entails. Here are some examples of keyword abilities. Bodyguard. This character may enter play exerted. An opposing character who challenges one of your characters must choose one with Bodyguard if able. This is an excellent ability to defend some of your other characters, which may be put at risk when they are exerted. Challenger. When challenging, this character gets additional strength based on the number listed next to Challenger. For example, with Captain Hook, Forceful Duelist, Captain Hook gains an additional +2 strength when challenging. Evasive. Only characters with evasive can challenge this character. Rush. This character can challenge the turn they're played. Note that these characters cannot exert for any other abilities other than to challenge. Shift. You may pay a reduced cost to play this character card on top of a certain character card listed in the ability. For example, with Stitch Rockstar, you may pay 4 ink instead of the 6 ink that it requires to play Stitch normally if you place him on top of an already played Stitch character. Note, a character that shifts onto another retains all damage, is either exerted or unexerted depending on the state of the character it was shifted onto, and is only affected by summoning sickness if the character it was shifted onto was played this turn. Importantly, that means if the character that is being shifted onto was played on a previous turn, the character shifted on top may exert the turn it comes into play. Support. Whenever this character quests, you may add their strength to another chosen character's strength this turn. Ward. Opponents can't choose to target these characters except to challenge. So, they can't be targeted by action cards or other abilities from characters except to challenge. For abilities that are not considered keyword abilities, they will always have the full ability described on the card. That way you always know what the ability does and how to use it.
Thank you so much for watching. We're obviously wee innocent babbies in the world of YouTube, but we're loving Lorcana, and we would so appreciate you sharing this around so more people can learn about the game and have some fun laughing at 2 goofs in the process. If you'd like to see more, hit subscribe and ring the bell. We've got more videos coming. More than anything, we'd love any feedback on how we can improve these videos for you and others. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time.